welcome to this special presentation from Story Into Screenplay. My name is Gerald Hanks. I am the founder of Story Into Screenplay. Story Into Screenplay offers script analysis and one-on-one consultations for writers at any stage of the screenwriting process. And my guest today is Damilare Sonoiki. Damilare is a veteran TV sitcom writer. He was a staff writer on Blackish during the 2015-16 season and a story editor on The Simpsons from 2018 to 2020. And in between those jobs in 2017, he also wrote and directed his own original sitcom pilot titled African Time. And today we're going to talk about his experiences in a TV writing room and offer some advice for aspiring TV writers. First off, Damilare, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
And for those people who may not be familiar with your work, can you tell us how you got your start as a TV writer?
Well, so I wrote for the Harvard Lampoon, which is a humor magazine at Harvard. And so a lot of writers for shows like The Office and 30 Rock and Saturday Night Live and Parks and Rec had come from the Harvard Lampoon. And so some of those writers would come back to visit, would come back on campus on occasion. So I got to meet them and just kind of learned about the television writing as just a potential career.
Now, obviously, between your experience at Harvard Lampoon and your experience on writing on TV sitcoms, obviously you got a lot of good advice from those writers. Now, what was your own experience like in a TV writer's room?
It was great. I mean, it's very collaborative. It's a lot of funny people, and everyone's just trying to, work together to come up with good story ideas, good episode ideas. Good joke ideas. So it's definitely it's a fun place to work. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, in terms, like I said, a lot of your experience has been through like Blackish and Simpsons and basically the whole network sitcom setup. Right. And now a lot of the content moving from networks to streamers, and we see a lot of the streaming services gaining ground on the broadcast and cable TV channels. Like obviously the biggest hit of 2020 was Ted Lasso on Apple Plus. How do you think streaming services have created new opportunities for comedy writers?
Well, I think it's good because it's like streaming is more year round. So sitcom kind of network kind of adhere, and even cable adhere to a pretty strict schedule. Like shows come on in the fall, and so that's a kind of a strict production schedule. But streaming is year round. But I think that I was reading an article about this Abbott Elementary and how she has this hit show, and she was on she went the network route, but they air on broadcast on ABC, but then the next day it's on Hulu, and I think that the Hulu next day availability helped build a lot of their audience. And so I think it's it's great to have all sorts of I think all sorts of formats. And I think streaming is probably lends itself a little bit more because people binge to an episodic sort of like each episode kind of builds into the next one in like a narrative arc, whereas I think network is more like you can watch it out of order and there's no it's not appointment, or it's not, you don't really need the context of the previous episode so much. But I think, it's great to have, the more the merrier for sure.
Like I said, with the streamers and creating more opportunities for content, many writers who also work on their original sitcom pilots in hopes of getting a network to pick or a streaming service to pick up their own original ideas. Now, you obviously have your own experience with your own original pilot you developed called African Time. What did you learn from that experience, and what advice do you have for writers who want to launch their own original sitcom?
Well, I think to the extent that you can kind of create and shoot something, to the extent you can create and shoot something on your own, that's the more you can, if you can create something on your own and shoot it, and that's definitely very helpful because it's like it serves as a proof of concept. But yeah, I mean, I think there's still such a long process to get something made to, especially for network or for streaming too. I mean, I think there's I think there was that Squid Games was in development, or it had been 10, 12 years or something that I read before it got picked up. So I think to the extent that you can try and do something on your own, do as much as you can on your own, the better.
like I said, especially with young writers and especially with writers who are looking to break in, there's a lot of that, even with the streaming services, it tends to be that a lot of writers think it's probably easier to crack the starting line for the New York Yankees than it is to get a seat in the TV writers room. So what advice would you give to aspiring writers who are looking to get staffed on a sitcom?
Well, I think just write, just keep writing, write a pilot. I think the best thing, if you can get a good pilot that really people really respond to, then you can, from there you can get if you have a good pilot, you can get an agent, and then if you get an agent, you can get staffed. It's not that easy at ABC, 1, 2, 3, but it's if you get an agent, if you have a really good pilot and it gets in the right hands, you can get an agent from that, and then from there you could get staffed on a show. Now it's going to happen right away, or that quickly, that easily, probably not, but it's it's a process. And if you're not writing, if you're not, if you don't have that piece of work that you can kind of point to, then you're not going to be helping yourself in that process.
And you talked about getting an agent. Of course, that's like the biggest barrier to entry. I think a lot of rookie writers run into. It's like, how do I get an agent? How do I get a manager? How do I break in? How do I get connections here?
I think it's, I was, I'm not gonna, I was very fortunate with the Lampoon. They open a lot of doors, but I think if you don't have that, I think just writing a lot and just trying to get it, trying to write like a really, really good or maybe build a Twitter presence, a social media presence, build a vlog, build a TikTok, build an audience somehow, which is easier said than done. But build an audience. Some people can do it through like stand up, through comedy, but build an audience online through your and let your voice, your humor, your sense of humor shine through that medium, whether it's TikTok or Twitter or something. And then you can get noticed that way. But I think having a pilot, having something that you've written that people can send, people can read and get a sense of your voice and say, okay, this is someone whose voice could fit in a writer's room, or whose voice I think has a future and can be I can see getting staffed.
Now you talk about people developing their original concepts through social media or through TikTok or something like that. What about, say, a web series? Like one of the biggest examples, not necessarily in comedy, but the big example of a few years ago when that don't recall his name, the young filmmaker from Kansas City who basically did a trailer, a proof of concept for Bel Air as a dramatic series, which then gets picked up by Peacock to do.
Oh, is that really how? I didn't know. I'll have to check it out. I didn't know that's how it got picked up. One of my friends is on that show, but I didn't know that it was. I didn't know that's how it was developed. Oh wow, yeah, it was a fan film. Wow,
Right. He basically did a fan trailer.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know that. Well, yeah, you see, I think that it's yeah, wow, I had no idea it was even that's how I had no idea that is how it even started, honestly. Wow. And I think Andy Burr, was he a Lampoon person? I don't know. He was. Like, he was president of Harvard Lampoon. It says he's one of the co-creators, he and his wife. Or I guess the Fresh, did they co-create the Fresh Prince? Oh, I guess they created the Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Right.
Wow, I had no idea that the Fresh Prince was a Lampoon person. But yeah, I didn't know it was a fancy. Yeah, so I think it goes back to my thing that look, I don't know Morgan Cooper's background, and if he already had Morgan Cooper, yeah, if he already had some sort of represent, because I do think there are times when someone seems to have just kind of like come out of nowhere, and then you look at it, it's like, oh, they have they have some sort of inside advantage. But if he didn't, I think that just shows you that creating something, or well, I have to look it up now, but creating something, it can yeah, I had no idea. Wow. Yeah, if they creating your own thing, because no one asked him to create he wasn't assigned to create this trailer that he did in 2019, but he did it, and now it's now look at it.
Now you talk about writers who, like I said, developing content. Like in this case, Morgan Cooper, he developed his content based off a different IP. Would you recommend that writers either would you advise them to create original content, their own original pilot, try to get noticed, or would you advise them to say do a spec script based off an existing series?
Oh, no spec. I mean, I know people don't really do specs anymore, so I would say definitely pilots.
Okay, so basically original pilots.
Yeah, no, specs are kind of out.
Okay. Okay. Now, obviously another issue that comedy writers and all of us had to face in the last couple of years has been the pandemic, and we've already seen a few comedies use the pandemic and quarantine and lockdown as the premise for stories. Now that at least a lot of the world is coming out of the pandemic and the lockdown, how do you think that has affected comedy writers? How do you think that whole issue has affected the market for comedy writers?
I think that a lot of rooms went remote. A lot of rooms went remote. I think that I think you don't want to feel dated, right? So I think I don't know how much. Sorry, I don't know how much. I don't know how much this is true or not, but I think so. A lot of rooms did go remote, but I do think because obviously LA is very shut down pretty significantly. I think that a lot of times you don't want to have a piece of art be dated, and so I think that setting something in the pandemic, unless you have like a really unique take on it, like I think that there's a movie called Malcolm and Marie that was pretty good, and it kind of it wasn't. I don't know if it was explicably said. It wasn't. I don't think it was said during the pandemic, but it was very much like I don't want to say. I don't think it was said during the pandemic, but it it featured. It was shot basically entirely in one house, and it featured basically it was like a director had come back from. I guess it wouldn't be the pandemic because he had come back from an award show and like he basically it was just like two characters in a house together. And it wasn't set during the pandemic, but it was produced. The reason it was shot that way is because it was during the pandemic, and so you can really have a whole bunch of actors and locations and crew and stuff. And so it was very shot shot in black and white as well. I think by Sam Levinson, the guy who does Euphoria. It was with Zendaya and John David Washington. But I think that I don't know. I think that you don't want to date something, right? Like I think sometimes. Sometimes it can be good because it gives it specificity, but a lot of times, like if it's kind of like a joke about, Britney Spears in 2007 might really resonate, but is it going to still be funny years later? So I think that sometimes, I don't know, the pandemic, I think it's hit or miss if you want to lean too much into it.
Okay, and I know you talked about a lot of writers' rooms going remote. Obviously, there's probably a lot more writers a lot of writers outside of LA almost look at moving to LA as almost a barrier to entry. Now, what would you say to?
I mean, I think that I don't know if it's a must, but it's definitely. I mean, I think being in LA is huge, even with the pandemic. I think just physically being there. I think I think if anyone has like aspirations, if you have like a family member, if you have a couch you can crash on, just to be out there, maybe find work as like a production assistant, or even, I don't know. I think that, everyone, there's a whole like, I guess it's more like actors who tend to be waiters, but, there's, the whole Hollywood thing, La La Land of, you're chasing your dream. And I think that can kind of feel a little bit cliche, but I think that there is beauty in that journey of kind of starting out and like trying to find, I think that there's some beauty in the struggle, so to speak, of, I think that it can kind of be frustrating if, just going out there and not having not having the job that you want. But I think that, I think that even post pandemic, like nothing kind of compares to being out there.
Okay. And also just in terms, I know you've obviously had a lot of guidance through, say, people at the Harvard Lampoon and some of those connections through there. And how much did they really guide you through the process of learning how to move from, say, magazine writing or sketch writing to sitcom writing?
Well, I think it wasn't there's not really as much guidance. It's more just like if you understand comedy, if you understand humor, it's pretty fungible or transferable. And I think that unbeknownst to us, like being in the Lampoon is very similar to being in a writer's room because everyone's kind of you're all trying to make each other laugh. You're all trying to be funny. You're all trying to like, not one up, but like kind of like if someone says a joke, it's like, okay, how can I kind of say a better joke or a different twist on it or build on that, and just kind of keep, the writer's room is called pitching, right? So you might have a pitch for, maybe there's a line, maybe there's a line of dialogue and you're trying to figure out the right line, it's a joke. And someone might say this and someone might say, some might have their kind of, might suggest a joke. And then everyone's kind of like, until you kind of land on the right one. And so I think in the Lampoon, we were often doing that, kind of just always joking. And I think that, so it kind of automatically transferred. It's not like anyone really sat down and said, oh, hey, like, this is how you write comedy. It's more just like you're just kind of doing it and you don't realize that it's very similar to the job. But also I think that I did have, Simon Rich, he's the writer. He was, I think, like one of the youngest writers ever for Saturday Night Live. And he also had the show called Man Seeking Woman on FXX that was really funny and unique. And he kind of, he told me a book to read, I think, or he definitely, like, he gave me some, like I think there's this book called Elephant Bucks. Although Elephant Bucks is a little older, so they kind of suggest that you should write a spec script, which now even back then, even when I was talking to him Simon Rich 10 years ago, however long, he was kind of like, no one does spec scripts anymore. But, he was like, you write, like some kind of basics on, okay, this is what you want to write a pilot, you want to write I think they were like, have a packet of your funniest Lampoon pieces that you've written and have a pilot and then send that around to people. And then like, through that you can get an agent and then through that you can get a job. But there wasn't like people sat down with you and taught you how to write a script or something or tell a joke.
Now, for writers who are looking for guidance, just in terms of how to write a pilot, how to do story structure, how to basically approach the whole writing process, if they're looking for coaches or consultants to kind of help them, guide them through that process, what kind of advice would you give them on what to look for in a coach?
There's some good books. So I think that what's it called? There's a good book called Elephant Bucks. Like Elephant Bucks actually does teach you very good story structure. Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Okay. Now that's in terms of books, but what about, say, in terms of like a one-on-one consulting or coaching or things like that? What kind?
I have a TikTok where I give advice, and I also, definitely am open to, advising people, consulting and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate your advice, and it's really been a pleasure to talk to you today. Now, if anybody wants to reach out to you in terms of finding out more about your experience,
so my tips, I'm pretty active somewhat on social media. So like all my social media is my first initial and my last name. So DSONOIKI, D Sonoiki. On that's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And I haven't been as active as frequent lately, but I posted a few videos on like screenwriting tips on TikTok. They got some good traction. And then also, so that's probably the main way, like message me on there. And, my email is, I guess, my first name dot last name at Gmail. But, I think social media is probably easier for like informal reaching out.
Okay. Well, like I said, I really appreciate it. And I think there's going to be a lot of writers here who's going to find this really helpful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
Okay. Thank you.